Good morning. And today is going to be a6 offsuit. We are under the gun, 10 NL game. I believe it's the same table for the last several days. Fold that. Button limps, small blind raises, and then button calls. So these are the same two players that had been the blind versus blind stuff. So the first guy limps, big blind, or the old big blind, now the small blind, makes that raise, makes the isolation raise, raises it to 4 big blinds, and then we get a call. We worked through villain 3, and I put together a range like this, and it's similar to the range that he was limping with, and that's because I've got the limp and called stats. So limp and called the raises, so I know he's going to have at least those hands in his range. We've got queen 9 suited. So we've got our suited connectors, but they're not like super low. But we have queen 9 suited, and if he's got queen 9 suited, then kind of assume he also has king 9 and probably these one gappers as well. It's 32%. I think we were somewhat close to that. Maybe we did larger. Maybe we added in the kings as well. But I think this is probably a limping range and probably a limp calling range. When we look at his stats, now that we're on the button and it is a limp, his limp first in stats 3 out of 5, and so 60%. We don't have a huge number. I mean, if that was 2 out of 5, brings it down to 40%. It could just be that he had some decent hands that allowed him to limp it at this point, the 5 times that he was on the button and it was limped to him. So we're going to go with this range. This guy's range is going to be a little bit harder. His raise preflop stat is 13%. Can't really look at the raise first in stat so too much. But what we can look at is the raise with previous limpers. So 1 out of 3. Kind of flying in the dark here as to what he would raise with. Small blinds, kind of a different position. I think players tend to be a little bit tighter in the small blind area. So, what kind of hands can we give him? Well, we've got a 3-bet range. We've got a called 3-bet range. So if it's a called 3-bet, then he either called a 2-bet or, raised it himself. So you can see like ace 8, ace king off, queens. Those I think are going to be in the raising range, possibly. We've got the 3-bet range of queens, ace queen off, ace 10 off, 4-bet range of jacks, ace king. So kind of if he's gonna 4-bet jacks, I think he's raising with him here. I went down to 10s. I think that's probably okay. And then I did ace queen plus. The ace 10s are harder for me to include. They're harder for me to include because I just don't think small blind players normally raise with those hands. Could be wrong, but I don't think he's going to raise with those hands. So I have a fairly tight range, almost 5%. He raises. I'm going to say that whatever the simping range is, this is also his calling range. And then we go to a flop. So the flop comes down ace 4-3 with 2 diamonds. So that villain 4 bets. I think that's consistent with all of his ace-x hands. He bets 2/3 pot. So I'm going to say top pair plus is what he's betting. I don't really think. I think the general trend is that players will check their kings, queens, jacks, and tens. They will check their under pair in a flop like this. So I'm just giving him top pair plus. And then villain 3 calls. His fold to c bet when in positions 80%. So I think he has something. And I think we've got a top pair plus type call. Maybe he calls with one of these under pairs. I think he definitely has like flush draw open ender in his range. I think that's definitely in his range. Kind of these under pairs. Do we put him in his range or not? He could be somewhat stubborn with this pocket pair, so yeah, we'll include him. I don't think he's gonna call second bet with him though. I really don't. So we've got our ranges. 10 of diamonds hits. That's gonna freeze. I think that's gonna freeze this guy. Not surprising. I think it's gonna freeze him with all of his hands, even his sets. Um, even his set. So he's got 100% of his range here. Villain 3 checks behind. I think that's consistent with 100% of his range. However, maybe he would bet a flush. Maybe he would take initiative and bet a flush. Let's set this to 50%, so at least we can account for the chances that he's very passive and chooses not to bet, because at this point he can't. Well, he could have the nut flush. He could have that king. Um, hmm. Yeah, normally I'd expect the king to bet here, so maybe it's a weak flush, but we're keeping basically 100% of his range here. Um, or almost 100%. We dropped out some of his flush draws that I think should be betting. Queen of Hearts comes out. Villain 4 checks, and then so lead guy checks. Yeah, I don't think he's betting with any of these hands that he currently has. And then this guy, yeah, I kind of think a flush is gonna make some sort of bet here. Um, Everything else is probably just gonna freeze, even though once the turn goes check check, and then the river goes check, he might be able to bet some for value. If he's got a two pair set, I think you can bet for value. I don't think a top pair should bet unless maybe you have ace king, which he doesn't. We've excluded him because we're putting ace king, ace queen in the small blinds range. So you don't want to bet like ace 8, ace 9, because I do think the ace queen, ace king is going to call, and if he calls, he's going to beat you. But if you have two pair or set, you're betting with the hope that the ace king, ace queen call. So that's a hand, and we see ace 8 and we see ace 7. So um, this is so we have ace 8, that was definitely there, but we did not have ace 7 off in this guy's range. Which is somewhat unusual as to why he has that. So we did not have that in his range. So let's add a note here. So he raised ISO raised 4 big blinds. ISO raised button LFI to 4 big blinds in small blind with ace of clubs, 7 hearts. He is out of position. He bet, I think it was 66%. Yeah, almost. Maybe 75%. We'll say 70. We'll just leave it 66%. Bet 66%. Check, check. On ace of diamonds, 4 diamonds, oops, 3 hearts. Then a diamonds, queen of hearts. Okay. That ace 7 is definitely interesting. So limp call 4 big line from VS small blind from button with ace of spades, ace of hearts is in position, called 66%. Check, check. There we go. All right. I don't necessarily mind the raise, ISO raise with a7. I think we can see that. We've got small blind versus button. You can see kind of the raises. Red would be 3 bets. Green would be red is 3 bet. There is no call. You've got the red first, or the raise first in, but you've got ISO raising here that you could possibly ISO raise. The light blue, the optional versus always. So a7's not in there. I guess when you think about the overall hands that he's probably just going to be calling, then yeah, you probably need to tighten up. And a7's just not. You really don't have any other way of winning. You don't have that flush draw. You don't really even have a straight draw that you can pick up. So, not really thrilled with this guy's ISO raise. Not really thrilled with his ISO raise. Limp call. I mean, it is what it is. I don't like the limping. He could have easily raised. I think if this guy raises, there's a decent chance that a7 calls. He shouldn't, but there's a decent chance that a player like this is going to call with a7. Flop comes, he's going to bet, he's going to call. 10's going to come out, it's going to go check, check, and then on the queen, it's probably going to go check, check, so he wins about the same amount of money. But I think that's the better line to take than the limp call and then call, the flop C bet and then check behind, check behind. I stand by my claim, though, that when it goes check here on the turn and check on the river, I think it's showdown. I don't think he should be betting at all. We gave this villain a much tighter range than what he actually has at this point. So we're thinking that he could possibly have like the ace king, ace queen. I don't think if he's c betting with like kings, queens, jacks, he's not going to call a bet. So I don't really see a point in betting on the river because it's not going to be a bet. It's not going to really be a bluff. You're not going to get better hands to fold, and any hands that call, they're going to beat you. But what about the turn? So he bets and then he calls. What about the turn? Is it worthwhile to attack the turn? I mean, that's usual. You call white on the flop to see what the out of position player is going to do. Out of position checks to you. Oftentimes you can go ahead and bet and pick up the pot, and sometimes it might take two bets to do that. But on this hand, because the 10 of diamonds came out and completed the obvious flush, I don't think you really want to bet. Because I think, at least if I was small blind, I check. I'm probably check calling with my ace king, ace queen, probably even aces. I'm check calling. And I'm check calling to defend against that aggression. Not even sure how to adjust. I'd run GTO, but I'm not even sure how to adjust. I mean, he's got a7 down there. Guess he would do something like this. He's got a7. I think he's got wider range. Maybe something like that. In any case, yeah. I just don't like how they played pre-flop. Especially the limp. So, yeah. Alright, so I think we're just going to call it there. Kind of worked it up. We did the hand. We had his hand. We didn't have his hand because we assumed he was going to be a lot tighter than what he actually is. That ace, a7. can't do a whole lot with that. So hopefully you enjoy the sand. Actually, let's run some GTO. All right, we got it. Out of position player. We put this as his new range. I guess we can include it. Do we do that? This guy's range definitely. I'm feeling pretty good about getting that range for him. We got ace 4-3. All right. Starting pot is 9. Effective stacks 86. We'll do 50%. All right, back to this range. Should we go back to the range that I initially had, or should we include his raising range like this? It's I think if we do a raising range, we're probably like that, because he has to have that a7. Let's do that. All right, we're gonna build the tree, and we are going to import, and we are going to edit this. We're gonna do 66% to be a little bit more. Yeah, I guess we're just going to leave it like that. All right, so we will run the solver and be back. All right, this didn't take very long. With that range that he has, looks like we are checking 80% of the time, only betting 20% of the time, and you can see that we are betting like 2 pair. But we've got our sets. We've got quite a few 2 pairs. So you bet ace 4, but we check ace 3. Yeah, we have to have decent hands in our checking range. And really, when you think about it, we've got a lot of aces. We're going to be top pair a lot. And if we have top pair, we block a lot of the ace-x hands that are out there. So, yeah, his play would be to check, but he bets, and Villain calls. And you can see Villain is defending. He's going to be calling quite a bit with his ace-x hands. He's raising sets. I think he's raising some 2 pairs. Again, ace 4. But he's meant to be folding all of those. So let's say he did call. And then we had the 10 of diamonds comes out. So he bet. Now it's checking. So his check kind of makes sense. But again, I said checks. If he bets, then he's going to be calling. And he is. Yeah, he's usually calling with those ace-x hands, the ace-king, ace-queen. But the weak kickers, looks like he's just going ahead and folding. And I probably would do that because you think the most likely hands that Villain's calling with would be a flush or the ace-x. And with the weak kickers, you just don't. I mean, you can't beat any of the kickers, any of the other guys' kickers. So in this hand, small blind checked. Button is betting about 55% of the time. And he's betting a decent range. He's betting his flushes. He's betting his sets, his 2 pair. Which I think we should be doing that. You know, you're attacking with those types of hands. Because again, with sets and 2 pair, you're kind of expecting ace king and ace queen to call. So you're trying to get some value from them. With the top pair, you're including like the low kickers, the ace 2, ace 5, ace 6, ace 7 as bluffs. And those are going to be bluffs because you're getting like the other ones, the ace 5, ace 6, ace 7s, the fold. some flush draws you're betting, and everything. So it just goes check check, and then we had the Queen of Hearts, I believe. Queen of Hearts went check check. Villain should be betting his better kickers, but again, it's okay with this check. And then yeah, check behind. That's no big surprise. So let's fix this to what I thought he was doing. So we did 10s plus ace king ace queen. I think our tree is going to be as is. So let's rerun the solver and check it out. All right, this finished up, and just so you know, I changed the range, so I had to remake the tree, and I imported the tree and made sure that the c-bet was 66%. So I would have expected that when this guy ISO raises that he is going to be c-betting most of the time, especially if you've got a stronger range, narrower range than this player. But that doesn't seem to be the case at all. It looks like we are betting sets some of the time, but we have checks some of the time with it. So we're actually at 18%. I think this is probably, again, if we have the ace, then we block a lot of the aces. If we don't have the ace, we basically unblock all of them. So I think maybe since we're going to have checks with these, we're going to have to protect it with our ace x hands. So that's kind of interesting. I bet we would check call. Yeah, we're check calling 60% of the time. We're sometimes folding those. I'm not too surprised. Villain has all those ace x hands available. So villain, check, he bets, calls, check raises with aces. I guess we include some ace king too for a check raise. So villain bets, we're gonna say he bets, and really that narrows his range down to like aces, some ace king, ace queens. He bets, villain calls. You can see that at this point, if this guy has aces or has an ace, he blocks a lot of those ace hands. Looks like he's raising kind of as bluffs, big part of the time. You're raising some of your sets. You're raising your two pairs. And then as your bluffs, oh, look at that, open ender with a flush draw. Some king queen. I think the surprising thing here, if you bet, you raise, is that GTO is calling for some of these raises with like ace 9, ace 8, ace 7. So he could have raised. It also has him call. So, if he calls and he bets like he does, he's got such a small frequency of betting that he is now betting much higher frequency. Still has some of the checks, and if he checks, he kind of give him the ace king, ace queen range because the diamond, with the idea that he's probably going to be check calling. And you could see that if he was checking those, he is calling those ace king, ace queens. And that's probably why I wouldn't necessarily bet with like an ace 8 if I was the button. So I went check. This guy checks. Is that right? Yeah, 62%. It includes some hands that he's checking. Yeah, flushes, sets, two pairs should be betting. Some of the top pairs should be betting, so that's not terrible. Queen of Hearts comes out. Once he check, he's probably checking again. Possibly check calling. Yeah, he is mostly check calling with like the ace king, ace queen. But he checks again, and then villain check. You could see all of the checks. So yeah, the check behind on the river is fine. Not gonna complain about that. I just don't really like how the hands played out. And I'm going to say it's rather interesting with a tighter range, and I'm sure it would be a tighter range for me too if I ISO raise from the small blind. That we're not betting most of the time here. We're not c betting. That we have a lot of hands that are going to need to be checked, so we're going to have to check our top pair of hands, those hands that I would have expected to see bet. So I think that's an interesting discovery. GTO plays it out, so hopefully we learned something. We'll call it quits here. If you enjoyed the hand, you can look tomorrow for another.